Okay, so a few weeks ago, we promised to follow up to our story about the Kroger-Albertsons divestiture plan, right? And we wanted to give some more context to the conversation, provide a little bit more transparency on what it really means for Kroger and Albertsons as they push towards this merger.
Yeah. And Sarah, before we get to that, I want to start out by pointing out that this merger, it doesn't just impact stores that have Kroger or Albertsons over the doors, right?
Mhm.
Kroger and Albertsons both own multiple different brands under their umbrellas that target like different demographics in the
Yep.
market. So I went to both of their websites and I want to just list off for you the stores, the brands that they have under each of their umbrellas, and we'll see how many you recognize. So for Kroger, they list as their brands Kroger, Ralph's, Fred Meyer, Dillon's, Smith's, King Soopers, Fry's, QFC, City Market, Owens, JC, Payless, Baker's, Gerby's, Harris Teeter, Pick and Save, Metro Market, Mariano's, Food for Less, and Food Co.
Okay.
Then we go over to Albertsons website, and these are the brands that they have listed there. Albertsons, Safeway, Vons, Jewel Osco, Shaw's, Acme, Tom Thumb, Randall's, United Supermarkets, Pavilions, Star Market, Hagen, Cars, King's Food Markets, and Balducci's Food Lovers Market.
I don't know if everyone was doing this as you were reading those names, but I was sort of keeping track of which ones are near me, sort of near where I live. We have a Vons, a Pavilions, and a Ralph's that are literally all within walking distance. So right now they're owned by the two separate corporations. If this merger passes, we'd essentially be shopping with one grocery corporation. So it's really interesting to see all of these brands laid out together. And I think you bring up, or this brings up, a really interesting point that I just want to kind of make here. Something that's talked about in the book Barron's, which I mentioned in last episode's news segment as well. It is not uncommon in this ever consolidating food industry, like even beyond grocery, for a corporation to own brands across the entire, let's say, demographic of an industry, right? When we're talking about coffee, we're talking about retail grocery stores, like you name it, there are corporations that own pretty much all of the brands at every price point so that they essentially have ownership of the entire market. It exists to a certain degree now. This merger would make it even more so, right, in grocery.
Yeah. And on the surface, this divestiture, which we talked about right before, it looks like a good thing.
Sure, because, well, let's refresh everyone's memory. The FTC required Albertsons and Kroger's to divest a certain number of stores. And then the Albertsons and Kroger team came back and said, you know what, we'll divest some more. Right.
Yeah.
And so the initial reaction is, okay, good. They're getting rid of more stores. But we were sort of tipped off by a news article that I saw that said, hey, this could actually be a worse outcome for people and create less access to food in certain communities. And so that's why we're taking this deeper dive into what does the divestiture actually mean and how do they make these decisions of what they'll keep and what they'll give away.
We're going to be pulling information from a specific article, which was one of the articles that we included in our research for the last conversation. And we're going to link to that article again in the show notes. It's from the Seattle Times. But specifically in this article, we hear from Kevin Bowe, who is a mergers and acquisitions expert at the Foster School. He posits that one way to understand this divestiture list and what it really means is to consider how all of the stores on the list fall into one of four buckets.
I think that this is so helpful. And I'm so glad that this article was created, because when we talk through what falls into each of these four buckets, the hope is, and we'll do our best to make it clear why we believe, and so many people believe, that this divestiture is in fact not a great thing. So kick us off, Chelsea. What is bucket number 1 that they're looking at in this process?
Yeah, so that first bucket is going to be the stores that the companies, Kroger and Albertsons, were basically forced to sell
Right.
to satisfy regulators' concerns about the loss of competition in the area.
Right.
So, for example, these are going to be like if there's a Safeway and then either right down the street or in the neighborhood or in the same even shopping center at times, maybe there's a Fred Meyer. Well, Safeway's Albertsons, Fred Meyer is Kroger. Under the merger, you no longer have competition in that community.
Right. So they're forced to divest one of the stores, and therefore, theoretically, competition moves in. Right.
Yes, but as we pointed out in our last conversation, I would point out here that they are divesting these stores to C&S Wholesale, which, under the condition that this merger is approved, they have already announced that I think it was the vice president of Albertsons would become the CEO and president of C&S.
Yeah. Really important fact to remember here. Great. Yeah. Great point, Chelsea.
So then we're going to move on to our second bucket. And Bo says that this bucket contains the locations that Kroger and Albertsons might have already been looking to offload, right? These are the locations that, for example, are either too close to a competing grocery store, or maybe they're really close to a hybrid retailer like a Walmart that also sells groceries.
It's really interesting. So here we've got a group of stores that the Albertsons and Kroger's were already looking to get rid of because of the existing competition in the area. And so, one would say they're not really setting up C&S for success by giving them these stores.
Yeah, but on the surface, the next bucket looks like they are trying to set up C&S for success, right? The third bucket, Bo says, contains the locations that C&S might actually have found especially attractive. These are the stores in upscale neighborhoods that have little nearby competition, that maybe the current brand under Albertsons or Kroger is not really working, right? There's something about the location that it hasn't performed up to expectation.
Something Bo speculates here is that these are high dollar locations where maybe the current store isn't working, maybe the Safeway label isn't high end enough. And so C&S thinks it could be profitable, right, by upgrading the location to something more along the lines of a Met Market, a Whole Foods, a Sprouts, something like that. So this is a list of stores that not necessarily C&S for sure finds attractive, but that they might find attractive.
Yeah. And then our fourth bucket, as Bo describes it, are the locations that actually are not on the list. These are the stores that, for whatever reason, Kroger and Albertsons think will work best under their newly merged structure, right? Bo even points to a Safeway in Seattle, which has very little local competition. And it also has massive volume because it's right off of a major interstate. This he is citing as an example of the keepers for Kroger and Albertsons. These are like the really incredibly performing stores where they just have a lock on the market.
So let's recap these buckets here. So we've got stores that they have to get rid of, stores that they want to get rid of because there's high competition, stores they think that C&S could improve but would require an upgrade and sort of a rebrand, obviously, and the stores that they will keep. So let's zero in onto the second and the third buckets, right? High competition stores and stores that require investment and an upgrade. This confirms for me that C&S is not necessarily being set up for success and may struggle to operate its new stores. And as we said earlier, this creates a real concern that the result of this merger would look an awful lot like the results of the Albertsons Safeway merger of 2015. And to recap some of those stats, 30% of the stores that were divested in that merger were purchased back by Albertsons, some for as little as $1, and nearly 19% of the stores that were divested were closed permanently or converted to businesses that don't sell food. And in the last time we talked about this, a couple of episodes ago, we talked through the real human consequences, the areas, the people who were left without access to food, with no grocery store for miles and miles. And so we're talking about this to create transparency, to create awareness. I don't know what we can do personally to prevent this merger from going through, but the FTC's case against the merger is heading to trial on August 26th in Portland, Oregon.
Yeah, and so we are definitely going to be following along. And as this story unfolds, we will continue to bring you any important updates here on the show.
Yeah.